A lot of people online just simply don't understand what the First Amendment looks like and what it's supposed to be used for. It's this. This is what it's supposed to be used for. It's a restriction on the government, okay? It's not a restriction on you. The First Amendment is not about private corporations refusing to ban you because you said slurs. It's this. This is literally what it's there for. This is the exact reason for why it exists, okay? It is not a restriction on the citizens. It is a restriction on the government from engaging in displays of power against the citizens. There's a lot of commentary, a lot of back and forth happening on this stuff, and there's been a lot of news coverage on it as well. And virtually every single outlet has reached out at this point to get my insight into what took place. With the limited amount of spare time that I have, I tried to use that to the best of my ability and respond to questions and things like that. But overall, there was, of course, a lot of support from liberals who were terrified of the things that are unfolding. A lot of articles were written about it from virtually every single major news publication wrote about it. Here's the New York Times. On Hassan Piker, popular left-wing streamer, says he was detained at airport. Mr. Piker said he was questioned for 2 hours on topics including the war in Gaza and President Trump. Popular Turkish-American online streamer said he was stopped and questioned for hours about his political beliefs by U.S. Customs and Border Protection after flying back in the United States from overseas on Sunday. Mr. Piker, 33, said in a live broadcast on Monday that he was asked about his job, his beliefs on Gaza and the President Trump, and other topics he discussed on his live stream while being held for 2 hours at an airport in Chicago. Mr. Piker, who was born in the United States, said he was passing through global entry and a U.S. Customs and Border Protection program that eases security checks for travelers deemed to be low risk when an agent asked him to step aside. According to Piker, a U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement agent led him to an area he described as a detention center where he was taken into a room for questioning. It's very obvious they knew who I was, Mr. Piker said, using an expletive. He has about 4.5 million followers combined on YouTube, Twitch, Tricia McLaughlin, a spokesman for the Department of Homeland Security, said in a statement on social media that Mr. Piker's claims that his political beliefs triggered the inspection are baseless. Upon entering the country, this individual was referred for further inspection, a routine lawful process that occurs daily and can apply for any traveler, she said. Once his inspection was complete, he was promptly released. I found this to be a very funny response, and the reason why I think it's really funny is because, first and foremost, they admit to it happening. They openly admit to it taking place. Saying that I'm lying for likes is very funny. They don't even deny that it took place, okay? They simply deny that it was a political targeting. And I think it's important. I think it's important to take note of what the Department of Homeland Security is taking issue with here. What the Department of Homeland Security is taking issue with here is political beliefs being triggered for the inspection. That's important to take note of because it shows you what the admin is worried about. Because if they were not worried about anything, they would have just been like, you know, he is a figure of notoriety that we pulled a red flag on. Because they openly admit that the detention happened. They openly admit that the investigation took place. They're worried about the backlash that they might receive given that this is perceived as a political targeting. To which I responded with, by the way, in the NBC article, what part of a lawful routine inspection requires the DHS to question me about my political views, my opinions on Donald Trump, or my stance on Israel and Palestine? The agent was cordial, but the experience, along with reports of other Americans facing similar questioning, seems intended to create a chilling effect on speech. As a taxpayer, I believe CBP agents should be focusing on actual threats like preventing agricultural risks or combating trafficking, not interrogating people about their political beliefs. As I said, the DHS response is so funny because they're not even disputing that it happened. They're omitting the insane questions that were asked and instead claiming that I wasn't targeted for my political beliefs. Why'd y'all ask me about Trump, Israel, Houthis, Hamas, and my Twitch bans then? That is what is interesting about the process. Either the DHS is lying about the political motivations for HasanAbi's detention, or asking citizens about their allegiance to Israel is now their standard practice. Exactly. Is this normal? Not even just like allegiance to Israel, but also opinions on Donald Trump, the president, or opinions on Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. That's crazy. That's not normal. The reason why this is insane is because you are asking an American citizen who is literally a part of global entry, that is a known traveler to the Department of Homeland Security, an American citizen that was born on U.S. soil, questions about whether or not they have an allegiance to Donald Trump, the current president. None of this will bar you entry into the country. Do you understand? And I don't even think that that was the purpose. I think that the purpose was to create a chilling effect. Mr. Piker described the conversation as really, really interesting and very cordial. He said the agent asked him what he did for work, the topics he talked about in his streams, and whether he discussed the news, including the war in Gaza and President Trump. They straight up tried to get something out of me that I think they could use basically to detain me permanently, Mr. Piker said, using an expletive again. There's no direct connection or direct involvement. He also described the agent who identified himself as Iraqi as very sympathetic. Okay, they literally took very specific parts of this to make this seem like it was a pleasant experience overall. Okay, they omitted parts of this conversation that definitely maintained was not a pleasant experience. When he asked the agent why he was being detained, Mr. Piker said the agent told him it was routine. He also said he was repeatedly asked about his opinions on whether he was involved with Hamas, the Houthis, an Iranian-backed militant group that controls northern Yemen, and Hezbollah. Throughout the questioning, Mr. Piker said he was transparent in his responses and repeated the same answers, including describing himself as a pacifist who wanted the wars to end. In his broadcast, Mr. Piker said he planned to submit an online inquiry about why he was stopped. That's why I told you don't say cordial. That makes it sound like Ras Baraka. Yeah, but it's the truth. There's one citizen who has direct contact with Hamas, and through that, he facilitated the release of Eden Alexander. He's a pro-Trump Palestinian American businessman who arranged the White House-Hamas direct negotiations. Yes, exactly. The Trump administration is in direct contact with Hamas. What are we talking about? The idea that, like, having a direct contact with Hamas, or having direct contact with the Houthis, or having direct contact with Hezbollah is not allowed in any way, shape, or form is, once again, an erosion of what previous considerations would immediately destroy as far as like a need for detention. Okay. We've already dropped that ball completely. It is ridiculous. The f do you mean? Have you interviewed Hamas? I haven't, but I would like to in the future. What are you going to do? Arrest me? What are you, crazy? That's insane. Like, that is actually insane, especially because, as I mentioned this, like Jeremy Scahill's interviews with the Ansar Allah movement played a formative role in the Trump administration coming to the table in Oman to cut a ceasefire arrangement with the Houthis, okay? Direct contact with membership, direct contact with like the Politburo of Hamas, an essential part of the Eden Alexander release that took place. Yeah, and at no point did I say I was treated well, okay? I said the agent was cordial, but the experience overall was designed to create a chilling effect on speech. I have mentioned this before, and I think that a lot of people don't understand this, but you absolutely are allowed right now under the First Amendment protections as a citizen or non-citizen to express support for Hamas. The idea that you cannot do that is ridiculous. You, in the United States of America, as long as you are on U.S. soil, are protected by the First Amendment. The idea that you cannot do that is new. That's new. And even then, I personally was managing the risk in my mind and did not take it to that step when I was having a conversation with the ICE guy, okay, with the agent. I don't even know if he's ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, or potentially HSI. A lot of people online just simply don't understand what the First Amendment looks like and what it's supposed to be used for. It's this. This is what it's supposed to be used for. It's a restriction on the government, okay? It's not a restriction on you. The First Amendment is not about private corporations refusing to ban you because you said slurs. It's this. This is literally what it's there for. This is the exact reason for why it exists, okay? It is not a restriction on the citizens. It is a restriction on the government from engaging in displays of power against the citizens. Even if our speech is about the support of designated terror groups and represent national security risks, this person responds to, he says, merely expressing support for a terrorist group is still protected speech. So yes, of course. You can say what you want in a free speech society. However, you are not free from the consequences when free speech threatens the basic rules of society. You certainly are free from government imposed consequences, actually. That's the whole basis. You can't say you're not protected from the consequences. They're not doing a cancellation Twitter post, dumbass. They're trying to cancel your freedom. It is literally the basis for the First Amendment. And it's so crazy because these guys are so stupid. What does that mean? The First Amendment prohibits the government from punishing or retaliating against constitutionally protected speech it doesn't like. If the government is imposing adverse consequences because of protected speech, that is unconstitutional. Okay, sir. Someone comes in front of your house and exercises free speech right to say, I will burn your house. You're good. No problem. No, sir, you are not. I love that this guy is literally trying to debate a person who specializes in First Amendment litigation, okay? He is a First Amendment and defamation lawyer. The audacity. No, sir, you are not. No, why? Because that speech may have devastating consequences. So when a dude repeatedly and publicly states he supports a group calling for the death of America, there are consequences. If you cannot understand this, then you chose the wrong job. Except true threats are not protected speech. Saying I support Hamas is not a true threat. It is protected speech. So no, the government can't punish it, even if you think it has devastating consequences. Thanks for playing how to have no idea what you're talking about. If I were you, I might consider that someone whose job this is might know more about it than you. But then I'm not a moron. I liked your last sentence. You are correct in that this is not a crime. However, said type of speech will likely warrant an investigation and questioning. Speech is used as a probable cause or an escalating factor for a motive in crime. Example, if you beat someone up at the bar, this is battery and assault. If you beat someone up at the bar while yelling racial slurs at him, the rhyme is elevated to a hate crime. Your words are used as evidence to understand the motive. Hasan publicly supports terrorists. They may just be words, but those words beg the question. Is he sending them money? A crime. Is he helping them organize? A crime. That's not what question begging is. If you beat someone up, you already have committed a crime. What are you even trying to say? Cops can't just detain anyone they want because they said words of general support for someone else who committed a crime. It is kind of crazy that this, once again, goes along with the incredibly dumb thing that happens online all the time, where it's like American exceptionalism, American individualism, and just like Dunning-Kruger causes people to just go, no, actually, you, the expert dedicating his life to this, is actually wrong. I, random guy who doesn't like what this person is saying, will now sit here and act as though the First Amendment doesn't protect speech that I don't personally like. That's not how this works. This is also precisely the reason why, while I have maintained the position that, Nazis, neo-Nazis in particular, that violate or take advantage of like the liberal notions of wanting to have normal discourse, getting at least like some kind of blackballing or blacklisting, have always maintained the position that the government should protect their speech regardless. There is a limit to it, right? There are penalties that can be incurred through private modes of communication, but at the end of the day, I still understand that outside of circumstances where they are in the act of engaging in a hate crime, that yes, the government should not be arresting people on the basis of speech. The reason why I've also always maintained this position is because I'm Turkish. I'm from a country where there is no free speech. And part of that reason is why I can't even go back to my own country. Okay, this is the point. So yes, of course, I am frustrated to see my other country, the United States of America, the country that I was born in, Turkifying at a alarming rate. Platforming terrorist propaganda isn't protected speech. You are certainly no constitutional scholar. I'll say that much. You don't need to be a constitutional scholar to know that inciting support for a designated terrorist group crosses legal lines. But hey, keep defending the influencer industrial complex if that's your hill to die on. You don't have to be anything to know things that are completely wrong. I would imagine that's one of the principal benefits of being a moron. Imagine thinking the Constitution protects influencer cosplay while they regurgitate talking points from foreign terror orgs. You are not defending free speech. It does. Like, even if you think that that's what I'm doing, it literally does protect. It precisely protects that. This is one of those things that is incredibly frustrating to me. And it's kind of funny seeing others who are now having to deal with what I have to deal with on a daily basis. What I have to deal with on a daily basis is exactly this. The dumbest people alive that are heavily opinionated without like a true understanding of constitutional law, operating on their own personal feelings and assuming that the federal government and the way that things work is supposed to be at the mercy of your own individual perspective. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because every single dumb First Amendment defender, every single dumb free speech guy on the YouTuber orbit has basically unified in taking exactly the same positions that you're hearing with these blue check marks going after a First Amendment lawyer. Imagine thinking the Constitution protects influencer cosplay. No, imagination necessary. That's exactly what it does. Curious that you say the words regurgitating talking points and then you're not defending speech. What exactly do you think speech is? Speech ends where material support for terrorism begins. The Constitution isn't a suicide pact, no matter how badly TikTok lawyers want it to be. You spelled speech wrong, by the way. You're using words you read on the internet, but you don't understand again. If I'm misusing terms, you should be able to explain why without using sarcasm and smug filter. But you haven't, because deep down, even you know there's a line between opinion and laundering narratives for designated terror groups. You just don't care where it is. Why would I do that? You're immovably convinced that you're right without the slightest clue of what you're talking about. I'm not wasting my time on that. I'd rather do something fun like this. So instead of explaining your position like a lawyer, you're lobbing playground insults and dodging substance. If you want me to act like a lawyer for you, there's a fee arrangement that comes with it. This is an office, not a courtroom. This is the internet. If you hadn't come in hot, then consistently insisted you were correct, maybe I'd feel it was worth my time. You're bad. Guys who think free speech is when their friends get canceled for saying slurs fundamentally do not understand. Okay. Yeah. The Supreme Court of the United States has literally ruled that actual terror organizations like the American Nazi Party is protected under the First Amendment. It is ridiculous. This is one of the unique things about the United States of America and how expansive its First Amendment protections look like, as opposed to other liberal democracies around the world. But it does not make any sense that so many people just refuse to understand this fundamental principle. They refuse to understand the supposedly the most important part of the Constitution. They're just like, no, I don't understand. Free speech is only when I say slurs, or only when my friends get upset that titties are getting smaller in video games.
So this is a video of me talking, is that they think that they can take a genre that appeals traditionally to men and then shift it to a female protagonist or like a female setting and then expect to maintain their audience. That's just not how it works, right? It's like if you're adding in a character into a video game, like it's an action combat game, if it's a female character, she better have huge. And if she doesn't, you're doing something wrong. You don't give it to them, well, that's fine. They don't give you their money.
And actually, when the government decides that a person that I don't like is going to be falsely detained or whatever, then it's actually good. It's not protected by the First Amendment. It's like, no, that's the only thing that is protected by the First Amendment in these conversations that are taking place. If the government actually arrested you for saying a slur, then yes, that would be a violation of the First Amendment, unless you were literally doing a hate crime. But on speech alone, especially if you were like saying that you like the American Nazi Party or the Klan or the Houthis or Hamas, even though these things are not even comparable in terms of like the damage that it causes for America in general, where like obviously domestic terror organizations are far more consequential than a nationalist emancipatory movement in Yemen or in occupied Palestinian territory that has never done anything outside of occupied Palestinian territory, for the record, okay? As opposed to a domestic white nationalist terror group that is like actively doing direct acts of domestic terror on U.S. soil, okay? But even then, it doesn't matter. It's still protected. It's still constitutionally protected speech. Here is Anna, who is a immigration human rights lawyer, that says, to be clear, Hasan's political speech is unequivocally protected under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Also, he's a U.S. citizen. He has a constitutional right to re-enter the country under the 14th Amendment. This should have never happened. And it's so funny because people go, because it didn't happen, law. And that's the thing that I wanted to get to, okay? That's the point I wanted to get to, is like all of these dumb flop tubers don't know what they're talking about. Please, if you're coming in here to be like, Hasan, I don't really like you, but I wanted to hear your perspective on this. I wanted to understand what was going on, but I don't really like you. And my favorite content creators don't like you at all. And I've heard a lot of stuff because I've seen a lot of clips of you online. I need you to please, you don't have to listen to me. You don't have to watch me, but please go and like read anything, just anything that's not a Twitter blue check mark reply, okay? Please, because these guys are delusional and they are leading you down a wrong path. They are misinforming you, okay? They are misinforming you. They don't know anything. They don't know what they're talking about. Do you understand? They do not know what they are talking about. This is what is frustrating about this process. There are a lot of out of touch, delusional, uninformed, apolitical content creators out there, slop tubers in general, or people like Asmongold, or people like Ethan Klein, like people that are just like angry for no discernible reason or angry for whatever their own personal vendetta is. And they just basically delude people into believing wrong things. They push people into believing incorrect things. You don't have to agree with my positions on this, but when I tell you something about First Amendment protected speech, I'm telling you the truth, okay? They're glazing the DHS statement as a progressive community. Yeah, I saw like the 100+ posts that community has made. It's crazy. I mean, they're completely done. They are no longer a progressive community at all. We knew that already, but look at this. The H3 issue production subreddit has now posted about Hasan over 110 times in the last 24 hours alone. Even Hasan's own Reddit page doesn't talk about him this much. Ethan Klein works alongside CPP to get Hasan detained routinely as far as back. People call Chicago Chirac are looked down upon here and is usually used by MAGA. We have a saying here, shut the f about Chicago. Hasan implies that Admin killed himself. Hasan sitting in his daddy's lap. Hasan taking a question at O'Hare Airport by border agents. Hasan community shows that they're racist once again. Like, they literally posted Homeland Security, nothing but lying for likes. Can you imagine being a supposedly progressive community and looking at the fascist Trump administration's Gestapo agents openly admitting that a detention happened, but then saying that it wasn't political targeting and agreeing with the Department of Homeland Security because of your not even your own personal convictions about a Twitch streamer that you don't like, but because of your favorite content creator's opinions about a Twitch streamer he doesn't like. It's nuts. Yeah, I'm not criticizing Hasan here. He wasn't naive about that. He knew he was taking a risk by answering the questions. My point is that Hasan's risks are different than yours. He's a public figure. He cannot be disappeared easily. For ordinary people, do not talk to cops. Yeah, every answer generates more risk for you. That's why they want to keep you talking. They think you'll eventually mess up and say something that can be used against you. And eventually you will mess up, and it will. And yes, this is correct. This is why I also repeated this position initially when I talked about this yesterday. When I said the reason why I did this, as opposed to shutting the up as though it's shut the up Friday, is because I wanted to see, given my immense privilege as a public figure and as someone who has enough money to be able to defend myself, but especially given my position as a public figure, I wanted to see what the line of inquiry was going to look like. I made a calculated risk. I put myself in a position that was threatening deliberately by choice because I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to see what they were interested in asking. I wanted to see what the government was doing as far as their normal routine process. I do not advise you to do this. You should not do this. I used the immense privilege that I have in this process to see what the line of inquiry would look like. And I think that it's good that there are more eyeballs on this now, especially considering that this happens to regular American citizens. This has been happening to regular American citizens. And the news coverage on this up until this very moment had been limited. But doing this to someone with my level of elevated public status, of course, was going to trigger a lot of alarm bells, especially considering that while your favorite slop tuber might not consider me to be a personality, mainstream media does. Adults do. I don't understand. Do they not think that you would talk about this? I can only speculate. But my suspicion as to why they did this is because they want to create a chilling effect on speech for political dissidents. The reality of the matter is, given my background and given the stubborn nature, I am probably one of the worst people to try and do this to, because it's only going to reaffirm my commitment to speaking truth to power. And this should not scare you. Why don't you just stay silent versus entertain the questions? Oh my God, how many times do I have to describe it? Look at all of the media coverage that has unfolded since this took place. Okay. As a person with immense privilege, I wanted to use the opportunity of my own unlawful detention at the border to investigate further what their line of inquiry would look like. I saw so many Ethan fans go say this along the lines of, oh, people go through this every day. He's not unique, which makes no sense. Like, how does that justify it? I know. And that was the reason why I also entertained the line of questioning instead of engaging in the active shut the fuck up Friday. Because yes, a lot of people have actually gone through this experience, but a lot of people do not have a platform such as myself as a political dissident, as a media figure. That is the reason why I wanted to see what the line of questioning would look like, because I wanted to voice a concern through my own personal experience of what the federal government is doing here to a lot of random American citizens. That's it. That's the point.